The long game is the only game in town. And what that means is you have to take that dial and turn it to consistency rather than constant intensity.
Someone cares about you.
There's a reason why your heart is beating.
You still have a purpose. Don't give up.
It's important to know that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone. You are not alone.
Walking can be a simple but powerful way to clear your mind and transform your life, just like it did for our guest today, Canadian Army veteran Dave Morrow. Dave overcame serious injuries and mental health issues related to his military service in Afghanistan, and his fight back started with his first book, The Nimble Warrior, a turning point in his life. From there, he got involved in fitness training at local Army Reserve units and has made a big name for himself as an online personal trainer. Today, his work is all about helping veterans lead healthier and happier lives, something we're sure that resonates strongly with many of you listening today. Dave, welcome to the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
As our listeners begin walking with their Strava tracking their progress, we'd love to hear about your childhood experiences here in Canada. Would you share what it was like growing up north of the border?
Well, I'd like to, throw as many stereotypes as possible at you, that we wore snowshoes from November until May, that most of the time we had to use lamplight. But really, I guess it wouldn't be that much different than anybody that lived in like any of the northern states, because it's cold, it's wintry, we get a lot of snow. But the cool thing is we get to play a lot of hockey outside, which was always my favorite thing to do growing up, and still like to do, although the winter here this year is very mild. So I don't think we'll have any outdoor rinks this year, which is kind of saddening for me. But nevertheless, the experience growing up was, I guess, typical suburban kid growing up in the 80s. And we had, tons of outdoor time. Video games were just getting off the ground. Just had my Nintendo Entertainment System. That got boring after about an hour and a half because side scrollers were only so much fun. They're not like today with PS5s. It's like sensory overload. So we were always outside. I was always hanging out with my buddies, playing baseball, love baseball during the summer, and getting on our bikes, getting into trouble. And it was just a typical kid's experience. I have to thank my parents for really having the foresight, but also just the ability to just create a really loving and caring home that I really didn't have to worry, which I realize now is not really the norm. And I had great friends growing up and a great supportive family. So I'm very thankful for that growing up, and heading to school and stuff like that was another really good experience. And I realize now I'm a bit older, I'm like, that's not the case for most people. So I was really blessed early on, and you continue to be.
That's really awesome, having that type of stability, especially as a child. I know that's not typical, unfortunately, for a lot of us, or for many people out there. I don't know how many people actually remember what life was like outdoors in today's society, like growing up and going home only when the streetlights came on. And I guess here in Canada, that would be like 3:30 during the winter.
Oh, dude, yeah, you can see, right? It's like 4. It's like it's pitch black. Yeah, it's done at 4.
We're spending a winter up here just kind of enjoying the ice skating. But the thing that's really throwing us off is we feel like we're supposed to be going to bed by 6 p.m.
Oh, yeah. It's brutal.
So what eventually led you to joining the military then?
Well, it was, I guess, a combination of just being really active, being a kid, being involved in sports, and watching G.I. Joe. I mean, like that was... Every day at 4, G.I. Joe was on. So the funny thing was, my best buddy, still is my best buddy, his mom wouldn't allow him to watch it. So he would stay over at, past 4 to make sure he could watch it. And we watched Duke and Flint kick Cobra's ass. And yes, that was the initial, I guess, idea, seed that got planted. And, to speak more to just our activity, when we were coming home from high school, we loved the fact that our high school was we were on the border of getting bus service, but so we didn't get bus service in the summer anyways. So we'd have to walk. The walk was maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles. Like nothing crazy, but long enough to hang out with your buddies and tell jokes and kick cans and get into trouble. And that was kind of the highlight I remember from high school. Is the walk home was amazing. And we drop buddies off at their houses and stuff, and they'd be like, all right, see you tomorrow. And then, so just having that kind of as a background, just being outside all the time and going for walks. And then I really enjoyed going for hikes and going camping. I just figured, man, like the Army's got to be pretty much the same thing. At least that's what they're telling me. It's like you're going it's like you're going camping and you're getting paid and you get to shoot guns. Oh, wow, that's amazing. So we, when I say we, I mean me, my best friend I was talking about, we saw the recruiter at the same time, and we both came to the same realization. It's like, we've been playing guns and armies our whole lives as kids. I think it's probably time to actually put our big boy pants on, and this way we'll get paid. And for sure, we're going to get girlfriends out of this. Like, for sure, right? We're going to be lean, mean fighting machines. So we signed up. And here in Montreal, anyways, the unit we signed up with was a reserve unit called the Canadian Grenadier Guards. And the thing that was really attractive about that unit is in the summer, they do the changing of the guard that's similar to the changing of the guard in the UK. So scarlet red tunic, big bearskin hat. You get to parade on Parliament Hill. You get to do the sentry duty in front of the Governor General's residence. And I just thought that uniform looked amazing. And I wanted to look sharp. So I knew I wanted to do hard things. The Army was, and the infantry was definitely going to be that thing. So we joined up, and I stayed in for about 15 years and did a lot of walking as an infantry soldier, as I'm sure you know. And that just, kept my fire for fitness, health, and just being well. It kept that fire going, and I've continued it ever since. So that was kind of the origin story of me getting involved in the Army and getting involved in the infantry, and kind of what landed me here today. So I'm very thankful for the experience I had in the military.
That's really funny. When we sit here and we think about, oh, I'm going to be able to play outdoors. My job's going to be working out and shooting guns, camping with my best buds. I'm going to get really cool uniforms, going to get the girl or the guy, going to get shredded. I think we all had that dream that we were going to get shredded in boot camp, not realizing like just how short 2 to 4 months actually is to transform a body. But a 15-year career in the Army, whether it's a reserve unit or anything, a 15-year commitment to do anything, a lot of different experiences had occurred. So what was some of the highlights of your time in service that stand out the most?
Afghanistan for sure was I call it the cherry on top of my career. To put things in context, especially here in Canada with reserve units, we don't get deployed as a unit. We get individually augmented into regular force battalions that need reservists to fill gaps. So you can go as a private up until, light colonel essentially. And the cool thing about that is you kind of don't know what your job is going to be, but the bad thing about it is you kind of don't know what your job is going to be. But the process of getting in, it was very competitive because there was only so many slots. Canada hadn't really been in a war since Korea. We were all just itching for a fight. I joined. I was fully intending to go to war. My first tour was supposed to be Bosnia. And it wasn't during the height of the war, but I just wanted to get over there and do something. And so when Afghanistan rolled around, I knew I had to go. So I finally got a spot in 2010, and I went as a CIMIC operator, which is similar to the American Civil Affairs, but we structured it a little differently. I was an infantry NCO at the time. So my trade was still infantry. I was just trained as a CIMIC operator. So I got to walk around with a bag full of money, man. I got to do all kinds of cool projects, build culverts, build schools. I was a cool kid on campus. Who doesn't want to talk to a dude that's got a bag full of money that has the purse strings literally on him? So every Afghan in town, man, high fives, finger guns when it wasn't real guns. So I had a blast, man. I was a project manager, and I got along really well with my American company that I was working with, because I was the sole Canadian on an American base, which was awesome. So I didn't have a sergeant major telling me to shave my beard or wear my pants properly or walk around in proper uniform. So that was very cool. And I just realized I was able to work at this high tempo and basically do it unsupervised. and do a really, important job. And what I thought was a good job as well at the end of the day, because we got a bunch of stuff done and we opened up 3 schools. And by far opening up that school was the highlight of my career, because I'm a teacher by trade. It's like the universe was just saying, this is for you, Dave. This is for you, man. Knock this one out of the park. And it was cool because I got to even connect with so before I even deployed, I was teaching as a teacher. I was even working at my old high school. So I connected with all my old teachers as a teacher. Now we're equals, which was interesting. For any teachers out there, if you ever taught with your former English teacher as an equal, you learn a whole new freaking set of, I guess, values and just understanding of, oh, that person is actually a human being and not just an English teacher, and they're just as like savage as you are, which was pretty cool. So one of them was really keen on helping me out and supporting what I was doing over there. And so he got his class to fundraise, and we raised a bunch of money, and I was able to buy a bunch of supplies, and we put a nice big school sign outside the school, and we had a big ceremony, and it was just really cool. It was really cool to see. Now, the dark side of that is it's no longer there, but at least there was a glimmer of hope during that time that we were there, and they got the schools open, and that was really cool. So I was really happy about that, really proud of that. And then other things that happened during the career. Like the thing is, if you're a reservist, you get what you put in. So if you're really keen and want to do stuff, you'll get stuff your way. We did a Cambrian Patrol, which is the UK's premier patrolling competition, which was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. No, aside from parenting, which is totally different, hard, this was the hardest physical experience I've ever done in my life. And I got to lead the team through that, which was just freaking brutal. So that was very cool. We never done that as a unit. And there's just a whole bunch of other things too. The main thing though is my network, my friends network. I can't think of anybody that's not a former member, or at least tied to the unit that's in some way. And we've been friends for over 20 something plus years. And that's been really cool, because had I not gone to the military, I don't know who my friends would be. Who would I hang out with? I don't know. So that's really cool. That's kind of been my through line ever since, joining the military, is that I have this group of friends that they're ride or die, and we know each other inside out and backwards, and we can have a good time and also support each other in our goals.
That's really amazing that you had such a positive experience through all of that, and the fact that so much of your current life is made up of things that happened because you served in the Army. So what happened after 15 years that led you out?
Yeah, well, I wanted to start with the light before I talked about the dark, because it's like, Dave, that sounds amazing. It sounds like you had a stellar career, and I did, but the institutional issues were the main thing that pissed me off the most. And going to my transition process, I was just talking about this on another podcast too, because they were talking about transition. Like, what was your transition like? I'm like, well, I think I'm kind of still doing it, and just kind of started it because I didn't really have one. I got injured when I was overseas. So my back and knee were injured. That was just a thing, just got hurt over there. Okay, it is what it is. And then I'm in the process of, being medically released. But what I didn't know is that I had some psychological trauma as well that was just totally unaddressed. And I didn't address it because I was basically on the path to disassociating myself with the military 100%. I had actually planned to go all in and go full time. I commissioned to become an officer. I was an officer. So I was an NCO before. So I commissioned from the ranks. And the goal was to make this my full-time career. And then the wheels just started falling off. I just wasn't able to perform. I was getting pissed off with my leadership. They weren't asking any questions. I just took it as them not caring. And I just sunk deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole. Concurrently, I'm getting married, I'm buying a house, and we're having our first kid. So all these things are kind of going on at the same time. And I'm not really paying attention to me. I'm just going through the motions and making some bad decisions. I recognize that now. Decisions that were made out of pure fear, essentially. And what that resulted in was just like a cascade of just like bad decisions that created just an enormous amount of stress. And, you know, I was of the opinion that I got to keep myself as busy as possible, because if I'm not busy, then the thoughts start to kind of creep in. And so I started a full-time career, had a kid, just bought a house, took on a master's degree, decided I was going to be like a quasi CrossFit athlete. Started coaching football, started coaching track and field. The list goes on and on and on, man. I was just never not doing something. Busy, 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 right? And then the Army was still there, but I wasn't paying enough attention to it. And they were on my ass, like, why aren't you showing up, et cetera, et cetera. And then I got really jammed up. My back just kind of blew out. And that was kind of the moment I was like, oh shit, I got to take care of myself, because the Army was just giving me pills. They were just giving me Percocets. That was their solution. They're like, hey man, just, you know, take these pills, you'll be fine. And on top of that, they had the audacity to say, you're not injured, get out of here. Which was just, I couldn't even, like, I had a hard time walking for a long period of time. And I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that they would just blatantly say, like, you're not injured, get out of my office. This is from a doctor. So I was bitter, to say the least. And as I was doing that transition process, I just pulled away completely from the unit. Now, there's supposed to be a process. The process that happened for me was no supervision, no check-ins, and here's your official letter saying that you're out of the forces I got in the mail in 2016. That's it. My retirement ceremony was organized by me and my two other buddies that were leaving at the same time. So I just kind of left unceremoniously. And so the transition never really happened. And I didn't know I had to go through Veterans Affairs. I didn't know there was money waiting for me. I didn't know any of this. And so with that being said, I kind of did everything ass backwards. I started doing Google searches. I started figuring things out and realizing, oh, wait, no, I have benefits? Oh, crap. Oh, I should apply for those, shouldn't I? Mm-hmm. Things that would have really helped me along had I known about them. But I think the point of all this was that I had to go through it. And what it's allowed me to do is create and get creative, because I was in a bad way, man. I was stuck in my basement. I was unemployed. I didn't know what to do with my life. I just thought it was a complete failure. I hated the military. I hated everything. I just wanted to disappear. So the voice in the back of my head was like, no, man, like, this isn't going to be the legacy you're going to leave your kids. So go do something. And that's where I started writing. I started writing my book, The Nimble Warrior. I started doing some seminars. And thankfully, I had some guys at the unit that reached out to me, one in particular. And he trusted that I could build him a fitness program to get him ready for Special Forces selection. And that was something that I was not expecting. And it was kind of like a lifeline. So I owe him a lot, because if it wasn't for him to have the faith in me to just start that, I don't know if I would have got started on something. And that was really important. And I didn't really charge him much. I didn't know what to charge. So I just threw the kitchen sink at him, and he made it. I was like, holy crap, man. And he told a bunch of his other friends. And so that kind of gave me the spark. And then I realized I gotta do something. I gotta figure this out. And that's what's led me to the podcast, the books eventually, and the training programs. And that's where I, get to do a lot of my networking and go to all kinds of cool conferences and meet folks like yourself, Danny, and just live, I guess, the life that I always kind of wanted to live, but didn't know how to do it. So, and I'm still working on it. Right. So that's the long and short of it. Hope that wasn't too long winded, but that's essentially it.
No, it left me with a few questions. And, for our listeners, and those watching this on YouTube, know that nobody does life perfectly. Like, there's no such thing as the perfect life. Like, the things that we go through are the things that we were meant to go through to get to where we are today. And if you're sitting at the bottom of a bottle, or you can't get off the couch, just know that you're right where you're supposed to be to get to the next step. But just hang on long enough to get to the next step, because that transformation that ends up occurring is absolutely beautiful. But what I'd love to know a little bit, Dave, about your journey is, what was that spark? Because, I mean, here you are on painkillers being prescribed by the Army. You have every reason to be upset. Of just a lot of us know how it feels to just get out and have no acknowledgement from the leadership of the unit that was responsible for helping us get out. A lot of us, transition is the last thing that our unit was even thinking about. And they're just like, hey, we're going to put him to work if he can work until his last day, and then he doesn't show up tomorrow. And that's that. And so, you know, you're in the basement, you're under a ton of financial pressure. What sparks you to go, and then how does, so what's the spark, and then how does that spark ignite the fire?
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, I really think the spark was the fact that I became incapacitated and I was stuck in my bed staring at the ceiling. I had to get my wife to help me to go to the bathroom. We just had our newborn son, so that's over 7 years ago now. And I felt like a complete and utter useless piece of crap. And I realized I'm only in my like early 30s or mid 30s. I was 35 at the time. This can't be what it's going to be like for the next 10, 15, 20 years. This is unacceptable. Whatever I thought I knew, clearly I don't know what I don't know, because this isn't the way I'm going to live my life. And it was just that moment I just said, I got to freaking change, because now I have a kid. This isn't playtime anymore. I got real deal responsibilities. So I said, once I'm able to move properly again, once I'm able to get a grip of just walking, I'm going to go find the trainer at my CrossFit gym that I thought was cool and knows his stuff, and finally bite the bullet and be like, look, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to figure out this issue that I have. And the other thing I had to do too was get over the fact that I was convinced that the Army was right. The Army said, you're not going to be able to lift anything more than like 20 kilos the rest of your life, or we don't recommend it because of your injuries. And it's just going to be a lifetime of pain management, essentially. And I was like, all right, well, you guys are doctors. I guess that's it. And so once I came to that realization that I can't live like this and there's got to be a better way, and then I started doing the work physically, before I even started working on my psychological side of things, the physical aspect was the biggest game changer, because I realized that I was incredibly weak on so many levels. I thought it was because I was the PT guy at my unit. I would always organize PT stuff. I was a great runner. I could do push-ups. I could do pull-ups. I could ruck march until my legs fall off. Well, all good signs of being a good infantry soldier, right? But I had so many instabilities and weaknesses across the board, and then I was just super immobile. And my trainer, who's still my trainer to this day, just started figuring things out, and we started building the temple again. So that was the initial. If I hadn't have done that, I would not have been able to carry on and do what I'm doing now, because I was in so much pain. It was the actual training, the strength training, especially, that helped me build a body that was more resilient to that pain from the injury. So that made me realize, well, if they were wrong about that, and I had to just change my story and change my paradigm, what else are they wrong about? And what else am I wrong about? So then I just started looking at everything from a very curious lens. And I think the main spark was what I said, staring at the ceiling with my back injury. But then it was the realization that I was in it's going to sound funny, but I was in a pension meeting for all the teachers at the school I was at. And we had the rep that was talking about our pensions and blah, blah, blah. And I started doing some math in my head. I was like, hold on a sec. I'm not going to be able to retire till I'm 65. And I just did I did like a body scan. I'm like, I'm so stressed out right now. I'm like 35. I have to do another 30 years because I started my career late because I was in the military. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this. But this is like my golden ticket. Like, I have to wait 30 years and feel like this now. I'm going to feel worse in 5, maybe 10. And so the wheels started turning. And so fear was really kind of a motivator. But ultimately, I realize now it was the realization that I was built for more. I always knew deep down inside that I could do more. And teaching wasn't allowing me to express that. It's very controlled. It's very conservative. You have a curriculum. You got to get in on time, and there's no room for kind of innovation. I needed to be somewhere that really allowed me to innovate and take on new challenges. And then I did this online test for personality. And it was actually the Jordan Peterson's test. I don't know if you're familiar with Jordan Peterson, but it was called Know Yourself. And I paid for it. I think it was like $5. I started going down that rabbit hole. And it started listing all the things personality-wise that are essentially true about me. And one of the things that it became evidently clear is that being a teacher is like the single worst thing I could have been in, because it's too structured, it's too regimented, and they don't listen to me. So if that's the case, you're not in the right spot, man. And it has nothing to do with the fact that it's teaching. It has everything to do with the fact that personality-wise, it's not a good fit. Even though I thought my entire life, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a teacher. So that was kind of the kick in the ass that I needed to realize, well, what is it that I am meant to do? I had no idea. And so that's what led me to explore, write books, start a podcast. I didn't know I could do any of this. I had no idea. But I just said, you know what? I got nothing else to lose. I'm not doing so well. And I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan.
I am familiar. I was more on the Friends side during that era.
Okay, well, after this reference, I'll stick to the Friends references. But the George Costanza principle, where his life is a total disaster. He's like, well, everything I've done to this moment has been wrong. So if I do the opposite of everything I'm doing, then it must be right. And then he ends up with this amazing job with like New York Yankees. He gets a hot girlfriend. I'm like, it's the George Costanza. Everything I'm doing now is not working. So if I do everything opposite, that's got to be right. And it's kind of true. It's kind of true. I just took the leap of faith and just started doing seminars and like jumping both feet into things, writing books, not being like governed by fear. And that's what's led me to the growth that I've been able to have over the last few years.
That's incredible. Thank you for that illustration. Thank you for that explanation, because so often these transformations are so nebulous. People don't see the work and the amount of consideration that goes into letting everything go. They don't understand what it is to actually let everything go so that you can receive so much more, because now the mission that you've done, you've helped over 100,000 veterans lose 2 million pounds. You're crushing these goals.
Sorry to clarify. I'm aspiring.
Oh, you're aspiring to. Okay.
Yeah, that's my mission. I'm
just looking at what you're doing, and it's incredible though. Like that goal and everything that you're giving up to help others. Like, let's just repeat that. The mission to help 100,000 veterans, like, do anything, is incredible. Let alone lose 2 million pounds, which losing 10 pounds, getting one person to lose 10 pounds can feel worse than trying to pull a semi truck with a bad back.
Yes.
Because trying to get people to change habits and change their routines. I mean, I'm trying to encourage people to walk for 20 minutes a day. That's what I'm trying to encourage. Take 20 minutes for yourself. So, and I get frustrated when people tell me they don't have the time to go for a 20-minute walk. I'm like, you don't have 20 minutes for yourself? That's when you need it the most. So how do you go about what's your approach to motivating individuals, especially those that are dealing with physical or mental health challenges themselves?
Mm-hmm. The most important thing is to embrace the fact that you don't know what you don't know, and to just be curious. If your mindset isn't aligned with what you actually want to do, the old expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. I can't force anybody, nor can you, to do anything that they fundamentally don't want to do. You have to genuinely want to do it. Now, typically, people that come into my orbit are at that stage one. They're not at stage 0 where it's like, I don't want to change. They're at stage 1 where they go, I think it's time to change. What that change is, what it entails, don't know. But you catch somebody at that stage, they have a window of time that they need to start exploring a little further what that actually means. And so the most important thing is defining essentially what it is that you want. Because most people don't take the time. They go, I want to lose weight. Cool. And then the next obvious answer or question is, well, how much? And they say, 15 to 20 pounds. That's great. I mean, everybody, in my opinion, that's overweight needs to lose, 15 and 20 pounds. You could always lose that extra bit of weight. You shouldn't be carrying around extra body fat. But the more important question is why? Why would you even go through the effort of doing this? Because if you haven't established your why, then there's no way that you're going to carry on with a workout program that hurts. That's what it does. It burns. It's uncomfortable. You're going out maybe for a 20-minute walk and it's minus, well, we'll use Celsius here, maybe it's minus 10. It's not necessarily enjoyable because if you haven't framed the why around, let's say, well, you know what? I want to make sure that I'm healthy because I have kids. And that's one of my whys. My main why is I want to be able to sprint and pick up my grandkids and like throw them on my shoulder and like run at them and you know, sidestep and play tag in likely my 70s. Well, I need to have a long, like 30-year run where I'm really taking care of myself so that I can get to there. So that's in the back of my mind. So I'm not so concerned that I'm not smashing my records every week because I'm playing a long game, but I'm still playing that game. And so I keep that in the back of my mind. And for most folks, they haven't defined that. So that's why I typically like helping people with is defining it. Well, why? I mean, if you don't understand why, it's like any lesson, right? In the military, at least here in Canada, it's like the reason why you need to know this and then fill it in. Well, the reason why we do that is because it tunes you into what you're about to learn. Because if you're explaining something as a teacher, if I'm explaining something without giving context as to why you need to know this, you can just tune out. Now, there's students out there that will listen no matter what and take it in. But I'm especially sensitive to, if I don't know why I'm learning this, I'm not paying attention. I don't care. And that was always the case for me in school. Why do I need to learn it? I was good in trigonometry, but I was like, why do I need to learn this? And then when we started doing bracketing and calling in artillery fire and the worm rule, I'm like, oh my God, this is trigonometry. But for infantry dummies like myself, I'm like, oh, it all makes sense now. So, you know, like I was like, why didn't they just explain it to me like that? Well, obviously they're not. They don't know about the worm rule or, you know, calling in like indirect fire. But that's where, as a teacher, I really wanted to make sure that my students understood why. And so I try to convey that to people as much as possible, whether it's on the podcast or whether it's on a consult. You have to define your vision and your why. And once you do that, then things start to open up because then you can realize that, oh, well, I don't need to be a CrossFit champion. I don't even want that. I don't have to deadlift 405 pounds. Why? Like, why? Or like, you don't have to go for a run, dude. Oh, I don't know. That has nothing to do with getting fit. It's just in your mind, that's how you did it in the past. But if your goal is longevity, you can go for a run, but why don't you just go for a walk? Why don't you just eat better? Why don't you just tone it down a notch? And that's kind of the biggest kind of realization that I hope people take from any conversations that, you know, folks like yourself or myself have, is just like, you can just tone it down and just day by day do the actual bare minimum, but stay super consistent, and consistency is king. And that'll get you to whatever longevity, fitness, health goal that you're striving for, because you've defined the why, and then it becomes easy because you know why you're doing it.
I love that. Leanne made a little note as you were explaining this concept of know your why, and also planning for the longevity, because I'm always planning for the longevity. I understand that life can be short, but it's meant to be long. It's meant to be a marathon, not a sprint. Unfortunately, if you are a child of the 80s and 90s, growing up, we had this mentality of give 110% in everything you do. Go until you, like, we celebrated, at least in the States, we celebrated athletes that completed championships on broken ankles. And we say, look at how resilient and strong that person is. And they're a 16-year-old girl that's breaking their ankle to compete in a single competition for their life. What's going to happen 30 years down the road when that's all she has? You know, so defining that why and looking long-term is one of the things that we like to communicate to people as well. And I know on your podcast, you know, it's the Hard to Kill podcast. It's very much framed around health, fitness, misconceptions, correcting old truths with new methodologies to get people across the finish line, to get people playing with their grandchildren, or being able to eventually hike something like a Kilimanjaro at some point in their life when they retire at 65. Because if you're like most people, your golden years will be in your 60s and 70s because you were contributing to society by teaching, by having a career that kept you in the same location. And so being able to still be healthy when you finally have the free time is really, really important. So aside from motivating by helping them to find their why, and for anybody listening, try not to make it be a prideful thing. Oh, I want to look great. I want to get that uniform. I want to be shredded. Why do you want to be shredded? What's the purpose of that? If you can tie an actual purpose to it other than vanity, you're going to get shredded, you know? But what other key messages or advice do you share in your writings, your blog, your books, your podcast that you think would be important for some of our listeners?
One of the biggest things, and you kind of touched on it, is you got to dissolve your ego. You got to put your ego aside. I deal with a lot of guys that are coming from soft backgrounds. And just because you're in soft doesn't mean that you're not human. I know you do a lot of incredible things that are superhuman, especially when you're in. I was never in soft, but I know the guys that were. And now that they're out, they have the mentality of a soft operator. So they go hard or go home. I used to be able to bench press 355 pounds. I would do X workout in X time. I could run half marathons. I could do marathons. Yes, absolutely. I know, like that's your job. Your job was also to go and smash Taliban and Al Qaeda. That's not what you do anymore, right? It's like, no, I got 3 kids and I work at an office, or I got a nonprofit that I manage, or cool. So priorities are a little different. It's like, yeah, but I still want to, I know. So I think we just need to change the story and get rid of the ego of, but I want to be able to lift ungodly amounts of weight in my late 40s. Well, why? That's an ego thing. Nobody's looking at you in the gym being like, oh man, that guy used to be in the SEALs and he can't deadlift 255 pounds anymore. Like, who is that guy? Nobody's thinking that. That's in your head. And to be able to say, you know what, I'm okay with going for a walk every day when you used to do maybe a CrossFit workout every day is probably one of the most important things for the higher speed guys and gals that are out there. But also, I always say longevity is key. The long game is the only game in town. And what that means is you have to take that dial and turn it to consistency rather than constant intensity. One of the things I typically see in the military community is this propensity to always defer to something extremely hard because we're used to doing that. And if we're not doing it, we feel like we're not working out or we're not getting anything done. And that's not the case at all. When it comes to being healthy, fit, and resilient, it's, can you do 20 minutes a day for the rest of your life? That is much harder than doing 1 or 2 really hard CrossFit workouts every week, guaranteed. So being able to convince the individual that, hey, it's okay to go for a 20-minute walk every day with your wife or your husband. That's your workout for the day. It's like, that's a workout. It's like, yeah, it's unstructured work, but nevertheless, it's still low intensity, steady state activity where 92% of North Americans don't even get that. So you're part of the 8% club, if you want to call it, if you're just doing that on a daily basis. It could even be freaking gardening. It doesn't matter. But to be able to flip that switch to the low intensity side, which will then give you the ability to do the high intensity stuff at a much higher intensity because you're better recovered, your joints don't hurt all the time, and you're just a happier individual. That's kind of what we need to progress to. And that's what I help folks try and realize, that elder veterans, if you want to call it, in your 40s, 50s, 60s, we can't go as hard as we used to. We need to be judicious in our intensity. And then the ego part of it is being okay with, hey, I'm just going for a walk. You don't need to put on plates. You don't need to put on your rucksack. Like, just put your shoes on, just go, man. Like, it's okay. If you want to do it in flip-flops, go right ahead. That's fine. It's part of the process. And that's where I find a lot of the work it gets done, and where the unlocks happen, especially with weight loss. It's not about smashing really hard workouts because most veterans, I shouldn't say most, the research shows that veterans are actually more obese than general population, to the tune of like 42% versus like 39%. So it's slightly higher, but and there's a lot of comorbidities as to the reason why. But that's even more reason, to get out, because a lot of us also rest on our laurels. Hey, I used to be this like door kicking badass. Yeah, but you're not that anymore, man. Cool that you did that had experience, and thanks for the service. But you got another mission now, and it's take care of yourself, take care of your family, and on that point too, one thing that I've noticed is that the idea of taking care of yourself at a fundamental level when you've got work and family commitments, part of our training, part of the way we're coded in the military is we got to take care of the mission and men first, then take care of yourself. If you're playing a long game and you're falling apart and you can't take care of your family and breaking, like you gotta reverse that. You got to be able to take care of yourself, check in, make sure you're good, and then you can take care of your family. And that's kind of hard for me to get a grip of, but I've been working on it. And that's where I try to help others focus their effort as well. And it doesn't mean you're neglecting your duties. I think that's where a lot of folks get tripped up. It's like, no, 20 minutes. And you said it earlier. I know you have 20 minutes because if I were to take your phone and open up screen time, I guarantee you've got more than 20 minutes on that freaking phone. So don't tell me you don't have 20 minutes, man. So that's kind of the biggest message I try to convey.
That's awesome. And that daily consistent effort builds up over time. I'm on a kick right now. I'm on my own personal journey because last summer I was incredibly depressed on this scale. And in the mirror, I was obese. When I would tell my friends, especially ones that were veterans, that I was obese, they would look at me and go, "Nah, you're fine. You're just a little heavy. It's cool. Don't worry about it." And I would tell them, I would explain to them, I was like, "No, this is an unhealthy level to be. I'm depressed, not because I'm obese, but I'm obese partially because I'm depressed." And it kind of goes hand in hand, this physical and mental health. Our mindset is a reflection of our body. And we can kind of see who that angry, sad, frustrated, burnt out person is, because we can also physically see that a lot of them aren't just taking care of themselves physically on a regular basis because we're eating fast food or the quick grab go, the bag of chips, the thing that we can get on our way out the door. They really are just tied together because of the habits that we build. And I understand that you're working on a project, this Voluntold app, and I love that it's called Voluntold because the joke within our community is nobody volunteers for anything; they're just voluntold to go do something. All volunteer force. So what is this app that you're working on, and what's its purpose and intent?
Yeah, time to start moving. You've been voluntold. The goal was born, or sorry, I should say the project was born when I had a conversation with my good buddy Mike about a year and a half ago. And he's like, dude, we should make an app where we help our community get like walking and fitter again, because we're kind of fed up with, fellas and gals in our community taking their own lives. Right. And there's a clear link, and he's experienced it too. Getting fitter and healthier and going for walks dramatically improves his mental health. And you don't need to convince me. I'm like, yeah. And I told him, like, wait, hold on a sec. I had this idea a year ago. Didn't I tell you this over beers? Or he's like, no, man. I'm like, you sure? Because this is my idea. He's like, no, man. I just came up with this idea like the other day. I don't want to run it by you. So I said, well, the universe is clearly saying something to us. So let's see if we can figure this out. Now, we're not coders, but Mike is a game software animator. So he's been in the game industry. I'm in the fitness side of things. And so I don't have a background in making games, but we figured we're going to attack this from the different point of view, because we're both leaders from the military. So we know how to put together teams, and we know how to run teams, and we know how to manage people. So if we can figure that out, build a good team, then we can build this app. So the goal of the app is to get veterans literally moving in a fun environment where you actually play a game. So this isn't a new concept. We have probably apps that give us points, MyFitnessPal, whatever. The goal here, though, is going to be veteran centric. It's going to incorporate your Google and Apple Health Kit. So it's going to be step counter. You're going to get points for doing certain challenges. You're going to be able to track your fitness. But the novel thing is that we're going to be able to bring a whole bunch of different fitness and health resources to this app with the partnerships that we're making, namely Grunt Style. The foundation is really, really keen on supporting this project. And so we're really happy to be able to be partnering up with them and dialing into their Reverent Warriors campaign or activity or project, whatever you want to call it, which, if you're not tracking, is just an awesome way to get the veteran community out and about and walking and having silky hikes, which I freaking love as soon as I saw it. So that combined with the knowledge that a individual, let alone a veteran, that moves more, it's shown to be 1.5 times better than SSRIs and psychotherapy. Just the fact that you get out and move. If you move for, 8,000 steps a day, and that's kind of the stated goal is like, let's get you moving at least 8,000 steps a day, all-cause mortality drops off a cliff. Chances of, or suicidality drops off a cliff. Obesity drops off a cliff. This is just going for walks, as I'm sure you know. So if we can have a tool that's deployed within the veteran space, we're hoping that we can have a massive impact on the suicide epidemic. And in so doing, we can also decrease the rates of obesity, which is a comorbidity for suicide, as the research is clearly showing. So we're hoping to be able to attack this problem from a novel standpoint, because right now, from our perspective, the system, if you want to call it, is completely failed. It's not serving the community. It's sick care rather than healthcare. So rather than passively taking your meds and going to see a therapist, we're going to actually proactively get you literally moving. And I think this is the kick in the ass that we need, because there's a certain competitive aspect there as well that's going to be incorporated into it. So you can have some friendly competition, which is kind of what we're all about. I mean, we joined the military, like we want to kick some ass and take names. And although it's not like combat sports or anything more aggressive than going for a walk or eventually like runs and stuff like that, the goal is to build a community around it and to get folks as excited about going for a walk as they would have gotten excited, scrolling on their phone, looking at Instagram reels. So we're hoping that folks can get behind the project, and we're hoping to be able to launch that before the end of this year, so that folks can actually get on board and start walking and getting some points and building some communities.
I absolutely love this project that you and Mike are working on. It's so true. The simple act of just getting outdoors and doing things. I am a testimony of what our bodies are physically capable of doing in order to overcome mental health issues. 2 years ago, right before we started this podcast, I was on nearly 18 pills a day. Not necessarily because the system had failed me, but because I had failed myself. I stopped working on me. I was in a job that led to increased back pain, which was just a problem, which, does that cycle of pain leads to sedentary life. Sedentary life leads to depression. Depression eventually leads to suicidal thoughts and ideations, and that's a common cycle with many, many people. But by just starting to incorporate a daily walk, eventually has gotten me down, currently 40 pounds down. I'm finally out of the obese category. I am only on an antihistamine a couple of times a week, and I'm more open and transparent with the hard stuff that I'm going through, which is something that I'm never really good at doing. I'm never really good at reaching out during those times of struggle, and neither are a lot of people within our veteran community. And so if you could reach out to somebody that is currently struggling and give them a message of hope right now, Dave, what would that message be?
I'm going to be a little bit on the nose here, and I'm going to say you're your own self-rescue. You need to do the work yourself in order to get over that hill. And the biggest thing that helped me get through the crappy months, years, days was realizing that this is happening for me. Because that took me out of a victim mentality. And I was definitely stuck in a victim mentality. Why did this happen to me? Why did I join the military? These assholes at the VA. Stop it. Stop it. Stop the victimhood. It's not about you. It's about a bigger picture. It's about realizing that all of these things that you're going through are for a reason. And if you can embrace that this struggle that you're going through is for something bigger, then your life changes. And it's not the easiest thing to do, but realizing that it's up to you to make the change is empowering, but it's also scary. You can have two paths, essentially. You can take the path where you're grinding and you're struggling and you're taking action. It sucks. You're suffering, but you're moving forward. Or you take the path where you don't decide to take action and you still suffer, but there's no potential for you coming out on the other side. So really, which one do you want to pick, right? And that comes down to fitness, health, mental health, you name it. It's all about getting a little bit better every day, but it ultimately comes from you. There's no organization that's going to do it for you. And all these organizations are support organizations. The message that is not being conveyed, in my opinion, is that, dude, you got to do the work. Like there's no way around it. You got to do the work. And if it's reps in the gym, if it's reading books, if it's talking to your therapist, you got to do the work. And so that my message of hope is that you will get better once you decide to take extreme ownership of your own recovery and your own health and your own mental health, and just be patient with yourself, because the magic comes not days, weeks, it comes years down the road, but it's well worth it.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for spreading your message here on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast. And for our listeners, where can they find and connect with you and start taking ownership of their life?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Danny. I really appreciate it. I love having chats on other podcasts as much as possible. And your podcast is doing a lot of good out there in the community. So in order to get a hold of me, you can start with my website. It's super easy, davemorrow.net. It's mainly for me so that I don't mess up my Instagram and Twitter handles. So you can find all my socials there as well. But I'm active on Instagram at the Hard to Kill podcast, all spelled out. I'm also Dave Morrow PT on Instagram, and I'm starting to get a little spicier on X, and it's on my website. I'll have a hell of a time explaining my handle here. So you can try and find me, but it'll probably be hard. And then lastly, YouTube, I'm actually starting to grow my podcast there. So you can follow it through Instagram if you're there, follow it through X, or if you head to YouTube and go to Dave Morrow PT, the Hard to Kill podcast is there and growing quite nicely with video content. So you expect to see weekly videos there and weekly lives, which I just started. So I'd love to get your comments and feedback live on Fridays at 1500 EST. So those are the main places that you can find me, and I'm always open for a chat.
That's really awesome. We appreciate your time here, Dave, for sharing your profound military experiences, the hurdles that you've faced, and the impactful transition to health and fitness that you've truly enriched our listeners, for sharing your journey. And thank you again for joining us here on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Thanks so much.
Also, for our listeners, make sure to connect with 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast on Reese Across America Radio, ready for you on platforms like iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and the TuneIn app.